Welcome to Life in the Leadership Lane. I'm your host, Bruce Waller, where I am talking to leaders that are making a difference in the workplace and in our community. What do they do to get started? And what are they doing to stay there, to stay in that leadership lane? And today, my special guest, her name is Nicole Roberts. She is the Vice President of People and Culture at MVAH Partners. She's also a certified HR professional with her SHRM-CP and her PHR. She's also an author of the HR Without Ego blog and also serves as a contributor for Forbes Human Resources. And not only that, she moderates a job hunt chat. And oh man, there's so much more. I know you also serve on the Ohio State Council and a lot. So, hey, welcome to the show, Nicole.
Hey, thanks for having me. Man, I sound busy, don't I?
You are. I'm like, oh my gosh, I cannot wait for our audience to get to know you because you are busy and you're doing a lot of great things. Hey, I always like to, whenever I have a guest on, I always like to reflect the last time we saw each other. And I remember meeting you for the first time and we met at SHRM 2019 in Las Vegas. Do you remember that?
We did. Yeah, I do remember that. I was just thinking that it's been 2 years since we've seen people in person at events, and I'm so excited.
Yeah, exactly.
We're going to be back in Vegas.
Yeah, I can't wait. I can't wait. As a matter of fact, I pulled up a picture and it was me and you and Julie Doyle who were at one of the sessions. So anyway, hey, remember what goes on in Vegas stays in Vegas. So we'll stop there. Oh, I love it. Listen, I am super excited. We're going to talk leadership. We're going to talk about content creation, just all of the things that you are doing as a leader. But to kick off the show, I would love for you to share a little bit about MVAH Partners and how you serve your customers.
Sure. So I am super fortunate to be supporting the people and culture of MVAH Partners. We have nearly 100 properties in 15 states. And we are empowering people and enhancing communities by providing quality, beautiful, affordable housing. And so our business has both the development side of the business as well as the property management side. So we not only see these beautiful properties and communities from start to finish, but then we also get to welcome people home.
Oh, that's fantastic. Hey, before we go into your story, use the word super fortunate. As you're talking about working for your organization. And I know we're going to get into a lot of this, but why are you super fortunate?
I think that when you have experienced a poor culture, that you can really recognize what a really healthy one is and be really grateful for it and really appreciative of it. It's kind of like if you've been in a poor relationship and then you have a really good one, you have a really strong appreciation for it. I am really fortunate to be part of a executive leadership team, right? It's that whole seat at the table thing, somebody out there that's playing a drinking game, that's your turn. But just a team that has such a heart for people, that wants to do the right thing, that wants to invest in making people better. And especially in HR, a lot of time we get told to kind of like do more with what you have and just kind of be patient because the, budget's allocated for other things. And it's a really great culture. It's a really intentionally great culture. And I couldn't be more fortunate.
Oh man, thank you for sharing that. Hey, listen, anyone who's listening right now, get out your pen, get out your journal, because you're going to want to take notes here because I heard a lot of gratitude there. And I love how you talked about culture, and we're going to talk about that too. But hey, as we kick this off, I would love to hear the Nicole Roberts story. I got to meet you in Vegas at the SHRM conference. I want to know a little bit more about you. And could you share, hey, where did you grow up and how in the world did you get into HR and leadership?
Sure. So I have kind of an unconventional story. I know everybody says that, but so I'm originally from Mansfield, Ohio, which is like north central Ohio. And I moved to the Dayton area in the fall of 2000 to go to Wright State and pursue a business degree with a dual major in finance and accounting. I was planning to be like the next Susie Orman. I wanted to be a financial planner. I wanted to help people. And then I took my first class in business law, and I immediately changed my major to HR. And which, you know, of course, my parents were like, what? But yeah, I said, hey, guess what? I just changed my major. And it was actually in a management class that I was in where a recruiter came in to tell us about an HR assistant opening with the corporate office of a HVAC company. And so I raised my hand, interested, and I interviewed for the job and was hired on the spot. Really clicked right away with that female VP of HR. And 3 months into that role, the benefits administrator gave her notice. And so my boss came to me and she's like, man, I was really grooming you for that role, you know, but I know that you're full-time in school. And I thought, well, I'm in school to get a job and start this career. So I switched to being a part-time employee, full-time student to a full-time employee and part-time student. And just from there, I continued to move into progressively more amplified roles. I got to be a one-person HR department a couple of times, and I mean, really just baptized by fire, and gained experience in absolutely every aspect of HR and developing into that true generalist that has, you know, done everything, and just developing and increasing my scope and my leadership to where I am today as VP of People and Culture with MVAH Partners. And, you know, life happened in between there. So I earned my HR certifications in 2009 and 2015. And I did eventually complete my degree, but it wasn't till 2018. And now I'm pursuing my master's degree. So anybody that says that you have to, you know, go to that 4-year school and get that degree and do the internship, and then, you know, and that's the plan, the path that you have to follow, I say that's not it at all. You have to hustle and you have to work really hard and you have to really want, you know, what you're doing, but it's not when you finish, or even in my case, I'm not done, but it's that you put that effort into and that you're doing it.
Oh, that's fantastic. Oh man, there's so much here that I want to touch on. First thing is, I just talked about how busy you are, and here you are now, you're getting your master's. I will tell you that I can resonate with that story. And the reason why is when I went to college, I went for 1 year. I met my wife, we got married, and I quit school for 4 years and went to work for my family. Mm-hmm. And I really wasn't even thinking about, I didn't have a plan. I was just like trying to just get through, trying to raise a family. And I remember one day my wife asked me, she said, hey, you ever going to go back to school? And so I finished school, but it was 10 years after I started. Mm-hmm. And I love that story. And I know there's people out there listening right now that can really resonate with that, because maybe they have stopped going, but to give them like that comfort and that confidence, knowing that, hey, you can go back when the season's right. Yeah. I love that. Oh my gosh. So I want to touch on you. You mentioned that a recruiter came in and talked mm-hmm. about this position opening. And I always like to talk about like mentors, people mm-hmm. that have really like impacted our journey, because it seems to me that people that live life in the leadership lane, they have had mentors in their life that have pushed them to the next. Do you have any mentors that have helped you? I know that recruiter obviously may not even know, but that was kind of a, you know, that first sign of mentorship.
Right. Yeah. And it's so funny because that recruiter, I mean, it was literally like a temp service that took a chance and came in and, you know, stopped in at the very end of this class. And they just said like, hey, we've got this HR role we're trying to fill for this company locally. And, you know, probably not going to pay you anything, but I'll get your foot in the door. Anybody interested? And I'm like, I'm interested. Like, you know, let's talk about this.
I don't need to make money. I just need to eat. Okay.
I was in school. I knew nothing of making money as a full-time college student. I was broke just like everybody else. But yeah, I would say for sure mentors in my career. I would be remiss if I didn't mention Doug Hoffman, who was the CEO of the care center. And I reported directly to him. I learned so much about leadership from him, and he always demonstrated to me what I wanted before in a manager. You know, he had my back. He provided clarity and direction, and he had confidence in me that I knew what I was doing, and then just got out of my way, but made sure that I had the tools that I needed to be successful. And, you know, when I started with the care center, we were managing applicant tracking on a spreadsheet. And I mean, there were just some things that I said, hey, Doug, did you know that if you invest this little bit, you know, of money now, that we're going to be able to, you know, drastically reduce the amount of time that it takes us to fill these roles, because we could actually have this, you know, streamlined platform. And you know what, he trusted me and he believed me, and he, you know, he didn't say yes every time I wanted to invest in some new technology, but he trusted my judgment, and he, you know, let me do some things that really moved the organization forward.
That's fantastic. So you have a couple of words there that I want to touch on because I think that the first word is belief. You said he believed in me. And so there, in my opinion, there's nothing more powerful than someone believing in you. What do you think it was that he believed in during that time? Or was that just who he was?
I think it was part of who he was. I think that I demonstrated kind of right away that I knew what I was doing, and that I made smart choices, and that I asked really good questions. And I'll never forget that I heard him introduce me to somebody before, and he didn't even know I could hear him. And just the way that he spoke about me meant so much to me, because I took so much pride in my work, and I had worked so hard. And, you know, as a HR person that didn't have a degree, I mean, that was a challenge, kind of proving myself over the years. So it just meant so much to me that he thought so highly of me. And it made me work that much harder, right?
Oh man, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I share a lot about, you know, whether it's I'm getting a note or the way someone introduces me to someone, it just it fills me up. And all of a sudden now I want to work even harder too. So I'm glad you said that. And I guarantee there's people out there listening right now. Listen, that is like one of the most powerful concepts that we don't talk about, is having the belief in people. And then the second thing you said was he trusted you, right? So you demonstrated through all the things you did. Sounds like to me, you built a brand that says, I am going to do what I said I was going to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Oh man, I love that. You know, I'm curious, do you mentor others today?
So it's fun because my team is comprised of two females that are professionals that want to do more and be more in HR. And so locally and internally, I get to do that. And actually, we recognized that leadership training was needed internally within the company. So I get to meet with our current and future people leaders, and I get to train and develop them on a routine basis, which is, you know, just fantastic to be able to, you know, take their time and attention from their, you know, full-time job to come and talk to me and to learn about being better communicators, better leaders, better managers, the importance of having, you know, weekly scheduled one-on-ones with their team so they're not managed by interruption. And just that, also being able to share with them that, like, the company thinks so highly of them and thinks so highly of taking such good care of our people, that we're investing in you taking this time, you know, to work on yourself and to work on your leadership.
Oh, that is so great. Oh man, fantastic. You know, you're the vice president. I mean, you started, you know, as a part-time, you mentioned going to school full-time and working part-time, and then going to school part-time, working full-time. But today you're the vice president. And so you didn't just get there. I mean, you had to go through quite a journey to get to where you are today. And you mentioned earlier, you're still going. But I like to ask a question around purpose, because, you know, I wrote the book, Find Your Lane. And that was all about like finding what moves you, and, you know, what is it, a career, whatever it is. So I'm just curious, was there a moment when you found your lane, when you said, I love this, or there's small moments? Tell me about that.
Yeah, so it was probably in 2015. I was working at the care center. So, right, I had this great example of what a leader is. And I went from being a one-person department to, due to our growth and actually our pending merger, that I was going to have a lot more responsibility and in turn be able to start to build and develop a team. And I was pretty hesitant about it. And I was excited, but I was hesitant because I thought, well, gosh, I don't know enough about leadership, right? And so I started listening to podcasts and reading books and attending webinars. And I mean, I still do this to this day. I mean, I'm constantly trying to continuously improve the leader that I am today compared to yesterday. And I take so much pride in the way that I show up with my team. I take every piece of feedback about my leadership to heart. And I just take so much pride in the leader that I am today. And I can laugh about some of the mistakes that I made before when I, tried to say, here, this is exactly how I did it. And I've got screenshots and I've got whatever. And now you can do what I did. And I laugh at that now because I think, oh my gosh, like she must have thought I was crazy, right? Because what if my way didn't work for her? And what if her way was 10 times better than my way? And so I say to my team today, I'm like, look, just like what Doug did with me, like, I'm sure you can do this 10 times better than I ever did. Here's the support and resources that you need. Come to me if you need help. Oh, and by the way, this is how I did it a million years ago. If you want some kind of, structure to start with, but, do your thing. And they always just, exceed my expectations of anything that I could have come up with.
Yeah, that is so great. But you something I was hearing the whole time as you're sharing that story, and I was hearing the word vulnerability, and I was hearing how, hey, I've failed. I'm not afraid to tell you, here's where I failed. And we can all relate to that because we've all failed. But for those that are listening, like, how do they get to that point? Like, have you always been like that? Or before you made mistakes and you're like, oh, I'm not sure I want to share that. But then all of a sudden you're like, hey, here's the mistakes I made, and then of course, you kind of laugh about them now. Any insight there for any of the listeners on maybe how to be more vulnerable?
I think some of it's maturity. I mean, I definitely think that over time you kind of, stop caring about what everybody thinks, and you're focused on you, and you're focused on the relationships that mean the most to you. And it's not the fact that you make a mistake, but it's how you show up afterwards. And so if you try to just, downplay it, or if you try to even act like you didn't, people aren't going to trust you. And I think that I saw enough of how not to react or how not to behave when you make a mistake, that it caused me to really make sure that when that time came with me, that I knew that my integrity is most important to me. The way that I show up is most important to me. I mean, the reason why my blog is HR Without Ego is because, you can't have ego in your processes or in what you're doing, or you're never going to improve. And it's more important to me to show up the way that I want to than to worry about really anything else.
I love that. So, oh my gosh, it's not about the making the mistake. It's how you show up afterward. That's brilliant. I love that. I appreciate you sharing that. I know there's a lot of people listening right now or watching that are going to get a lot out of that. Hey, let's talk leadership. I mean, we're in 2021. We're getting ready to start we're in the end of the second quarter, getting ready to start Q3. I cannot believe it. We are not, of course, out of this pandemic, but we're learning to navigate through that. I was just wondering, first question I want to ask is, when someone asks you, Nicole, hey, what is leadership? What do you typically define? How do you define that?
So for me, leadership is an honor and a privilege. I mean, the organization believes in and trusts us so much that they are entrusting their most important aspect of the business, right? The people, in our guidance and our care. I mean, that's an honor, right? So it's definitely not something to be taken lightly, for sure. I am actually quite thankful, kind of as I mentioned earlier, that it was only in the last 5 to 10 years that I was really interested in a leadership position. I didn't have the maturity for it before, and I'm really thankful for those that recognized that and allowed me to continue to grow and work on myself before I took that on. I mean, leadership really isn't for everyone, and I believe so strongly that organizations need to make sure that there are defined career paths for advancement, both as an individual contributor as well as in leadership and management roles, because advancing in the organization shouldn't only be available with managing people. And when someone is a manager simply for, pay, title, prestige, it shows. And we need to provide other opportunities, because otherwise we're doing a disservice to our teams and our people.
Yeah, that's so good. I love how you shared about defining career paths. I think that that's so important. I'm curious, we're here, like I said, we're here in 2021. 2020 was so heavy, heavy. Do you find yourself leading any different?
So I don't think that it changed the way that I led. I think that it amplified it. It's really essential for people to have a place to live. So our business stayed 100% open during COVID. Although we modified the way that we were able to serve our residents, and follow the guidance and the protocols, and have, offices by appointment only. Otherwise they were locked, but people were still physically, at our properties. And I've always been really big on having weekly one-on-ones with every member of my team, in addition to having a team meeting. And during COVID, I doubled down on FaceTime with my team and with our teams throughout the country. I mean, we were sent home for a little while from the corporate office because we're in Ohio. And we had a 9 a.m. call every morning with my team. I said, hey, grab your coffee, turn on your Teams. Let's talk about our day. I mean, it was changing every day what we needed to do differently to best support our teams. We had people that needed a letter that in the event that they were pulled over while they were driving in their respective state, that they were showing they were doing, official company business, because we had people that were on call and maybe out in the middle of the night when the states had the curfews. And the most important thing to me was to make sure that my team was so aligned and in tune with what our top objectives were, that we were able to get together, level set, get going. And then we still had that, Teams chat, or the ability even to have a quick video call if something came off track, or if, there were additional questions, or if something new happened. Our executive team even met twice a day at first to make sure that we were being really proactive and transparent in our communication. And not only just with our teams, but also with our residents, because their expectation and what they were used to was going to begin to change as well. I mean, we had to close community spaces. That didn't make anybody happy, but we wanted to make sure that we were ahead of that before it just was, everything is shutting down and this is what we're doing.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. I love how you said double down on the calls. I love that because I've shared this on the podcast before, but in the book Everybody Matters by Bob Chapman, he talks about 88% of employees in this survey don't feel like they're cared for or heard, and so I started asking different people, hey, do you feel that way? And it was amazing. The number was about that, a number of people that were saying, yeah, that's true. And I'm like, man, that is incredible. And it's all about what you're talking about. I mean, in your case, you displayed incredible leadership by saying, I'm doubling down. I'm going to make sure I'm connected. Hey, I want to talk about your blog just for a second, because so you're an HR lead, you're a leader serving HR. But yeah, you have this blog, HR Without Ego. And so I was reading some of the blogs before the show, and I read your blog, but just a few of these titles: Culture Check, Is It Safe to Make a Mistake? Connections during a time of quarantine. People Are the Purpose. The Power of Giving Back. I mean, your blogs are absolutely incredible. I want to ask you a question. I mean, you don't have to write those. Why do you do that?
So I started that blog in 2018 after I was participating in Twitter chats that would spark more thought and more conversation. And I had a super long commute then. It was like, could be an hour and a half at times one way. And so I'd start dictating thoughts and ideas into my phone during my commute. When you're driving, you get that really clear headspace, and things would just come to me. Steve Brown is one of my other unofficial mentors, and he encouraged me to start writing and sharing it. And he said, if you're thinking of it, somebody needs to hear that, and people want to hear that. I certainly don't write every day. I read before that Lori Rudiman says she writes every day. I certainly don't do that. But I blog out of inspiration or maybe a situation when I feel like, hey, someone needs to hear this, and then I write. And if there is ever a time where maybe I've observed a situation where I think, man, that, just a couple of things could have been differently there and it could have been so much different, that'll inspire me to write as well. Because I think, well, if this situation, was handled that way, how many other people don't realize that they could just tweak it just a little bit and put a little bit more heart, or maybe put a little bit more vulnerability into it, and what a better outcome there could be.
I mean, I love that you do this. I mean, like I said, you don't have to do this, but I've also, write a blog, and there's just like, when you said it creates that space, as you're driving to work, I'm with you driving down the road thinking about that. And it's so true, and reflect on it. But at the end of the day, hey, if it can help one other person, wow, isn't that a bonus? I want to ask you. So one of the things one of the reasons, and I'd planned on getting you on the show, but you posted something and it really caught my attention. I said, I want to talk about that. And you had recently posted something that was around, you mentioned that you like to help people get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And like, when I saw that, I was like, bam, that is like, that. First of all, that's special. Second of all, there's a lot of uncomfortable people out there. I'm uncomfortable sometimes in some situations. Our mutual friend, Jennifer McClure, she has a quote in one of my journals about comfortable is the enemy of awesomeness. What prompted you to post that? And how do you help people get comfortable with being uncomfortable?
So getting comfortable with being uncomfortable is kind of a passion project of mine lately. I mean, how many times have we seen people who aren't addressing even like mild issues, right, with their people, because they're just so afraid of conflict, and they're so afraid to have a conversation, or afraid to have the real, direct, clear is kind conversation that, I mean, there are some people who have no idea that their behavior is a barrier to their success. And imagine if you would just tell them and give them the opportunity to change it, or I had a situation the other day where I said, okay, and so what'd they say when you talk to them about that? And they were like, oh, well, I mean, I didn't, like, I'm going to give them this write-up. And I was like, yeah, but you didn't talk to them about it first. I mean, are you sure that you even want to give them this write-up? Maybe it's something that's completely a misunderstanding or a miscommunication. How do you know that they knew that they were supposed to do, whatever it was? Or even with something as simple as on my team, I mean, it's difficult when you're giving somebody feedback and you're not being punitive, you're not being mean, you care so much about their future that you want them to be the best version of themselves. And if you can see something from your perspective that is impacting that, why would you not want to share it with them? I mean, you have these one-on-one meetings so that you are building that trust with one another, so that when you do give somebody feedback, that they're not questioning where it's coming from. You know, they know that you care about them as a person. They know that you care about their success. I used to tell people when we would have, you know, performance type conversations, I would say, you know, if we didn't care, we would let you go on about your business and maybe leave the organization and never tell you. But we care and we want you to improve and we want you to be a long-term part of this organization. So we care enough to tell you.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, and I think that's a great approach and way to frame that up. I will tell you that you mentioned a couple of things. Number one, giving feedback. I will tell you there are some people, they don't want our feedback. And, you know, I've been in some situations before too, where I'm like wanting to go tell the person that, hey, if you would just do this a little bit different, you know, we could have more success that way, or whatever that is. And I remember I had done that before, and oh man, I thought they were going to quit. They really took it personal. And so when you have situations like that, then the next time you go into that situation, it's like, oh man, I don't know what you know, if I want to do that, but it's so important. You got to keep going and keep doing that, because you mentioned also about the importance of building trust, and maybe in that situation, I hadn't built that trust ahead of time. But so for people that have experienced a little pushback, what do they do? What do you typically tell them?
So the way that people receive feedback has a lot to do with them. It has a lot to do with your relationship. I mean, it has a lot to do with what has happened to them in the, you know, 6 to 12 hours before you had that conversation. So you can't always take that personally. You have to go in there, you know, assuming positive intent with them, with your relationship, with your intentions. And if it doesn't go well, you know, I mean, sometimes people aren't always ready to hear the truth. And so you need to kind of do a gut check with yourself. Like, you know, hey, did I show up the way that I wanted to? Yeah. Okay. Well, then the next time that I have to go into this situation, I'll keep that in mind, and maybe I'll tailor my approach, and maybe I won't. You know, I mean, sometimes there's definitely a manipulation aspect of the way that somebody reacts to the way that you try to provide feedback. They don't want to receive it, and so they may behave in a certain way that would, at first glance, make you not want to provide any more feedback. But it's really important for their development. And so you just need to make sure that they understand that. And maybe you come back kind of after the air has cleared and after, you know, kind of the emotions have subsided, and you say, hey, I want to let you know, this is why I really felt that it was important to tell you that in that moment. And I wasn't real comfortable walking into it. It certainly wasn't something easy for me to do, but I cared enough about you and I cared enough about your future with this company that I had to let you know.
Yeah, I mean, tough conversations, I would think, are a good example of this. And I think that the strategies you're talking about are just right on target. But there's some other areas too. I mean, like if somebody wants to, I was thinking about, you know, you've been part of Ohio's SHRM, you know, local chapter, state chapter, but you probably remember the first time you went to a meeting. I might have been a little bit uncomfortable. Did you ever experience any of that?
It's so funny you say that, because so I am super type A, but I am also an INTJ, and I am a super duper introvert. So I hate small talk. I'm not comfortable in places where I don't know anybody. And so part of how I got so involved in a lot of my volunteerism, especially with Disrupt HR, I reached out to Jennifer McClure at a Disrupt HR Cincy event, and I said, hey, I have some free time before the event. Do you need me to come help you, you know, set up? Do you need somebody to, like, you know, run the registration? Because I had a job and I could focus on something and do something, and I wouldn't be standing around waiting around to do small talk with people. So I want to be part of the event. I really do, but small talk is not my thing. So I want to have a job to do. So with GECRA, I started to be the SHRM Foundation chair. And so I got to go around and, you know, do fundraising at the events and things like that. And then I'd sit down and I'd participate and I'd learn things, you know. And then when I connected with Julie Doyle, And she said, hey, we need some help with social media stuff. I'm like, I do social media all the time. I'd love to help you, But it's part of that is that helping thing. And part of it is, please give me a job to do so that I have some way that, one, I feel like I'm contributing and I'm helping, but also that I'm not sitting at a table waiting for an event to start and, trying to drum up conversation with people.
Yeah, I mean, that was your lane. So you found that lane where you could get involved, but what worked for you, right?
Mhm.
That's fantastic, by the way. I share in my book, and I'm so vulnerable about the first time I went to a Dallas HR event, how I went in the second meeting after going in the first meeting. I was so petrified. I went in and saw this massive crowd of 250 people that all looked like they knew each other. And I walked right back out to my car and sat down and I waited. And about 10 minutes later, I decided to go back in. And of course, the rest is, has been fantastic. So speaking of that, so there's some people out there. I know there's some people out there that say, I want to get involved, but just have not been able to get into that with being uncomfortable zone. What's a tip that, let's talk about maybe because we're talking about the importance of investing in people and all that. What's a good tip? Maybe it's inside the organization or outside the organization that they might do to get more comfortable.
Practice. And if you are like me and you're an introvert, find you a friend that's an extrovert. Like I mentioned about Steve Brown, he's another mentor of mine. I'm very fortunate to work in Cincinnati where Steve lives and works, but I'm 100% certain that I would have met him regardless of where I lived. He's always been one of my greatest cheerleaders, giving me advice and guidance when I was chosen to represent the SHRM-A team and testify before the House subcommittee on workforce protections to the proposed changes to the FLSA. I mean, he called me on the phone and he's like, hey, Nicole, this is what to expect. He encouraged me to start my blog. He encouraged me to do, these volunteer leadership positions. I would go to things with Steve and he would introduce me to people. And then it would make me a little bit more comfortable. I think part of that also is really believing that you belong there. I think that when you aren't sure and you don't know people, that you kind of feel like you have to continue to prove that you belong there. Same thing when you start a new company, right? I mean, they hired you for a reason. You don't have to keep asking for permission to do your job or prove that you belong there. Like, you know what to do, have the confidence to really, dig in and do it.
That is so great. And by the way, she's referring to Steve Brown. You can listen to Steve Brown, episode 49. Fantastic. Best-selling author. I mean, we could go on and on about him. Hey, you also contribute to Forbes Human Resources Council. You're a contributor there. Here's my question. I mean, we're talking about a lot, like you write a blog, you do all this stuff. What drives you?
Helping people. And I feel that when you get to a certain level in your career, that it is your honor and your privilege, just like in leadership, to give back and to develop the next generation of HR professionals. I was talking to somebody who's super early in their career right now, and they're, really excited and wanting to get started. And they said they can't wait till they're at that point in their career when they can start to give back. And I went to Minnesota SHRM and I got to talk to a bunch of HR students. It was the coolest thing. And they asked me a bunch of questions about being in HR and, recruiting and things like that. And the biggest thing that I told him is I was like, you know what, hustle, learn as much as you can, ask people about themselves and not just about what they do, really take a genuine interest in what you're doing and the people that you're doing it with. And then when you get to a point where you feel like you can share that knowledge with somebody else, you have got to do that. There are far too many people who are amazing that we never hear about and we never know what they're doing. And you get to a point where things kind of feel like a no-brainer and you're like, oh, well, people don't need to know about that. I don't need to tell people about that. spoiler alert, they need to know. It's not a no-brainer. Just because it is to you, because you've been doing, I've been doing this for 17 years now. I find out every day that something that I just kind of take for granted as something that I know because of how long I've been doing this is not. And so, people want to hear what you have to say. People need to hear what you have to say. There's, plenty of social media and other audiences to go around that we can never have enough perspectives of people and leadership and, individual practitioner HR, senior leadership HR, recruiting. That's why I do the job hunt chat, because I like to help people who are, looking for a job. I've been a one-person department several times, so I was the recruiter. Now in my, senior leadership roles, recruiting is under me. I can tell them what I'm looking for, what's going to make them a better candidate. Hey, did you know about this resource, this website, what's the point in having all that knowledge if you're not going to share it with anybody?
Yeah, no, that's great. I love how you, a lot of stuff you shared are great tips about helping like anyone that wants to advance in their career. By the way, what a special person to say, I cannot wait to get to where you're at so I can give back. I remember thinking, I'm just trying to make money here. I had no thoughts about that until I got to the season I'm in. That's fantastic. Hey, since you touched on job hunt chat, I want to ask you just real quick. For those that are listening and may not know what job hunt chat is, share with, there may be somebody out there is like, oh my gosh, I need to do this. What is job hunt chat and how can someone participate?
So job hunt chat is a weekly Twitter chat that is held on Monday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern. And it was actually started like 12 years ago. I've only been a moderator for about 3 years now. Josh Rock got me involved in it. And if you don't know who Josh is, go find him. He's fantastic.
I'll put his information in the show notes for sure, Jock. That's fantastic.
Yeah. And we have an hour-long Twitter chat where we have job seekers and job helpers. So whether it's an HR person, a talent acquisition person, whatever fancy word you want to call it, somebody that wants to help somebody else find another opportunity, we get together and there are questions and answer format. And we give people the opportunity to connect, to ask additional questions or provide advice or provide resources. And it's just a really great way to connect and inform people that are, in that either beginning to look in that job search or they're already in it. When somebody is like in search, every second counts, every minute counts. And so we want to make sure that we are providing them with tools and resources and asking people, please don't wait until you need a job to start networking. Have a network of people, no matter how uncomfortable, it might be. And when you start asking for help, believe with all your heart that the people in your network want to help you. That's the whole reason why we're connected, is so we can help one another. And don't be ashamed and don't be scared to ask for help, because we all want to help.
I love how you do this. And so I will put that information in the show notes. If you want to get involved in Job Hunt Chat, just click that link and you'll be connected and just show up. Hey, I want to ask you a couple more questions before we get into the end part of the segment. Leadership. That's every day. I always like to ask leaders on the show, do you have like a daily practice, or is there something you do every day that keeps you on track?
So I would say nothing is typical in HR. Right? That's what's so great about it. I do have structured days though, where I have regular scheduled weekly meetings, such as my one-on-one meeting, my executive meeting, my team meeting. And then I also take advantage of the insights in Microsoft, and I book focus time every day to work on projects or be able to just plan for the unexpected and have it not completely derail my day or, completely stress me out because I'm booked back to back and then something happens and I've got, no time and no breathing room to take care of it. that does happen sometime, but it is the exception and it's not the norm. And I'm a better leader and better at my job when I have intentional time booked to work on things where I can be singularly focused and also have time to, learn new things or attend a virtual event or record a podcast.
Oh, that's fantastic. Oh, so good. So good. Okay. Here's my last question before we get into the final segment. Have you ever been given some advice like it was so good? Maybe you got it from a family or a friend or a colleague. It was just so good. You find yourself sharing that often.
So be patient is one of them, and I hated hearing it, but I appreciate it. Work on yourself and work hard. The only person that you can control is yourself, and it's kind of fruitless to try to control anything other than that. I know when people are in situations where they feel like there's so much going on with their job and maybe it's not a healthy culture and maybe they just don't feel like they're able to do HR the way they want to. I always tell people, like, focus on yourself, focus on your own results and what you can do that can make the greatest impact, even if it's just to your individual team or to, this other area of the business or a project or something, because people go into HR because they want to make a difference and they want to make an impact and they want to help people. And there are times when we get into organizations where maybe our help isn't wanted, and that's impressed upon us. And so we need to kind of channel that energy into something else. And you need to always remember that you were hired for a reason and that people need you. And so you need to really focus on where you can make the greatest impact.
Yeah, that is so good. I love how you started it with be patient, because I remember early in my career, I was not very patient, and I had to learn that. And I also love the work on you. It reminds me of a quote: "If you want more, you need to become more."
Mm-hmm.
And I know that you mentioned Lori Rudiman's name earlier, and I know that she's got a book out, Betting on You, that just like that amplifies what you're talking. You just got to keep getting better, working on yourself, and eventually good things will happen. I love that. That is so fantastic. I told you the time is going to just fly by. So now we're going to go into what I call it's time to accelerate. And we're going to have some fun questions here. The first question I have for you, I know you mentioned earlier podcast, but would you rather read a book or listen to a podcast?
So I like books on Audible and I like podcasts because I can listen to it while I'm doing other things. I mean, I was cooking dinner while I listened to Betting on You, Lori's book. And I like Clubhouse too, because of the same thing. Like I can listen to it and maybe participate and maybe not, but learn things and get new perspectives while also being able to do other things. Because as you said, I do quite a lot. So I need to be able to multitask a little bit.
Oh, that's so good. That's one area I've not jumped into yet is Clubhouse. I just have not been able to find or make time for that yet. And so one of these days I'll try that. Hey, what are you most grateful for?
The people that took a chance on me and provided opportunities, the doorways that were opened from even being part of the SHRM team and from, being in Steve's network and Julie's network. I don't think people ever realize how much of an impact just those relationships have. My career wouldn't be today what it is today. My network wouldn't be what it is today if it weren't for Twitter chats and people that provided opportunities.
Isn't it amazing how you're talking about Twitter chats? I mean, these are people that are all over the US, all over the world. That are able to, it's not just like in your backyard, your community. Hey, I want to touch on one thing before I ask these final two questions, because I was going to mention it earlier and I'd start talking about something else. You mentioned there grateful for the SHRM team, and you mentioned that you testified. Okay, so two things. One is, what was that like being uncomfortable? Like, were you uncomfortable going into that? Number one. And number two, once you got through that, how did that feel?
So just to be invited to testify, I mean, you get this whole official paperwork. I mean, it was the coolest thing ever, right? I mean, my boss, it was Doug at the time. So my boss was super proud of me and excited and told the whole company about what I was doing. I went and prepared my testimony ahead of time and, met with Lisa Horn and her team. I bet I stayed up till 1 o'clock in the morning the night before running through my testimony, because I did like theater and musical theater in high school. So I was like, I'm going to be there and I'm going to be polished and I'm going to represent SHRM and represent small business, you know. And so I wanted to, you know, make everybody proud and to be a credible, confident representation. You know, I mean, I was going to be interacting with the actual people that were, you know, represented in the House of Representatives and with, you know, the fellow people that were testifying alongside me. So I wanted to make sure that, you know, I brought my A game for the A team.
I love that. I love that. And then you got through that. I will tell you, that's pretty impressive. I'm so proud of you. That's so cool. Hey, like I mentioned earlier, we're halfway through the year 2021. What are you kind of excited about as we navigate through this pandemic on the other side? What are you excited about?
The possibility of seeing people in person and events again. I get so much energy from being around people in those events. I mean, I know I'm an introvert, but the in-person learning, you can't, I mean, there's nothing that compares to that. And the idea sharing that happens and just hearing different perspectives and then getting to see the people that you've formed these relationships with over the years that live, you know, so far away, and you're all in one place at one time and you get to celebrate one another. And I mean, there's really nothing like it. I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, no, I love that. You're right about in person. I mean, I've been getting a lot out of the virtual, but there's nothing like being in person and someone says something and you be able to look over at your neighbor, you know, and give that, you know, that look. You're like, oh man. Okay, last two questions. You mentioned the word energy. What else energizes you? Anything personally?
Fueling people's passions and helping and finding new ways to do things. And I'm a super nerd. So if there's tech that's going to make my life easier, such as I discovered the Remarkable 2. And if you haven't, go get you one because it's amazing.
Okay, what'd you say? The Remarkable 2?
It's called the Remarkable 2. And I will show you. So look, see how thin it is?
Okay, so for those who are listening, she is holding this up. This is fantastic.
It's tiny. It's super thin. It has a little pen.
Okay.
And I would have told you about the Full Focus Planner, but my Remarkable 2 has it digitally. And it is amazing. And then I can go into my, what they call the daily diary aspect of it. And I go over my goals, 3 things I'm grateful for, and the best thing that happened today. Which, by the way, the best thing that happened today was that I got to do a culture check-in with one of our new hires, and he showed me pictures of puppy dogs and told me that he had the best onboarding experience that he's ever had, and that he was absolutely loving being part of the team.
Okay.
I mean, what's better than that, right?
Does that fill you up or what? That is fantastic.
I mean, I get to do one-on-one check-ins with our new hires and say like, hey, how's it going? You know, I mean, they're in 15 states, they're in 100 properties, you know, I mean, like, I'm not just, you know, walking down the hallway. This guy was actually in Texas today, and he was just telling me about how much he loved working there and the cool things that he was doing and what he was learning and the ideas that he had. And I love it so much.
Feedback is an incredible gift. Okay, this is the final question for you, Nicole. Nicole, 10 years older, she's knocking at your door. You're going to go answer that door. What's she going to tell you?
It took me long enough to stop caring about what other people thought and to focus on me and to continuously improve myself and those around me. And hopefully nice work. You know, look at the impact that you've had on people just because you had the courage to put yourself out there.
Oh man, that is so good. I love that. You are definitely driving in the leadership lane. This has been an absolute honor to have you on the show. Hey, if someone wanted to connect with you or wanted to learn a little bit more about Job Hunt Chat, how is the best way they should connect with you?
So LinkedIn and Twitter are my professional social media. So at the end of my LinkedIn, it's just N Roberts HR, right? Easy enough. And then on Twitter, my Twitter handle is N Roberts HR. And then my blog is www.hrwithoutego.com. So another thing, super easy and straightforward. I try to make it as simple as possible for people to be able to find me if they're looking for me and connect with me. And Job Hunt Chat is on Twitter, hashtag Job Hunt Chat on Monday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern. And I am the moderator the last Monday of every month, but I will pinch hit and help out with other moderators other Mondays.
Oh man, that's fantastic. And by the way, Simple is my middle name. So when you said I make it simple, I'm like, I'm all in on that. This has been such an honor. I appreciate you coming on the show, sharing incredible perspective. I am confident a lot of the information you shared today is going to help a lot of people. And for that, I say thank you. And most importantly, thanks so much for your friendship. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you.